everyone. I hope you're doing really well and having a good day. So I'm out in my garden today and we've had some crazy windstorms coming through, cold weather. I've been holding off on planting out my dahlias and all of my seedlings that I started this year, except for a tray of pincushion flower and stalks, which I planted the day before this massive windstorm rolled through. And so I hope those guys make it. But what I wanted to do with you guys today is a couple things. I want to show you a brand new border that I made with the help of my sweet husband. It is at its longest 80 feet long and at its widest 35 feet wide or 35 feet deep. A massive, massive border. We did this using the no-dig method. I used primarily DeWitt landscape paper as well as some cardboard in some areas, and then when I ran out of both of those things, I picked up, per a suggestion in the comments actually, some contractor brown paper that I used to finish a small area. So it'll be kind of interesting to compare how those different materials hold up in the no-dig method or using the no-dig method. But I also wanted to kind of show you, we're going to film an official garden tour this weekend, so look forward to that. But the La Belle Epoque tulips are out and they are interplaying with Penelope rose that's coming up and next to a crocus rose, and then the delphiniums behind. And there's another beautiful one of my favorite tulips that's going to come up later. But I just wanted to give you a little peek at this bed because it's looking so pretty right now. And that gorgeous Royal Raindrops multi-trunk crabapple with these charming beauty tulips underneath, which I think these are 3 years old. These, if you're looking for a beautiful tulip that will also perennialize, of course, depending on where you live. I'm zone 6B, so we get quite cold in the wintertime, but these have perennialized very well. They even tolerated me digging around them to transplant a rose this spring. They've got some of their heads knocked off from our puppy prairie, but this bed still needs to be weeded and mulched. I've got a dandelion popping up, but one of my favorite bush clematis that's coming up through this little obelisk. So I wanted to share with you some plants I picked up as well at a local garden expo that has been put on hold for the last couple of years due to the pandemic, but it was back this year and it was so much fun. I got to go with my sweet neighbor Carrie, and we both got some really lovely things. But let me show you our brand new giant flower bed. Now, all of my delphiniums, or not my delphiniums, all my daffodils, the narcissus, are starting to go. But if you remember, not that long ago when I shared with you some of my bare root roses, this was just a giant weedy dirt patch. It looks very different, and now I have all of this opportunity to plant that I didn't have before. You can see, I'll show you, this is what the DeWitt landscape paper looks like. It is completely biodegradable. This is it butted up against the contractor's paper. These poor little starts of this Campanula Pritchard's variety, you can see all the wind damage on it, but hopefully they will do okay. I'm going to run the water over here. So the wind has blown some of the mulch off, but so this is black, and I think that also helps with, of course, like the light exclusion to the weeds below. I definitely didn't want to use landscape fabric because I want to densely plant this area and I want to have cottage flowers be able to reseed, and that's not something that can really happen with landscape fabric, and it will rob the soil of nutrients. And I didn't want to do that either. This area, I have been adding organic material to it every year, even the areas that were full of weeds, and everywhere that I dig now in my garden is filled with earthworms. This is very depressing. I don't know what it is, but every year it seems like my deer sample something new, And I've said this in the past, I've had such good luck with them staying away from all of my viburnums. But this spring, they have munched on almost all of my viburnums. And so I just planted this beautiful Kern's pink snowball bush that I got at Christensen's nursery. And look, they ate all of the upper leaves off and the upper blossoms off. But it is blooming. You can see it's lovely. It will survive. And someday, you know, this is going to be up to 12 feet tall and wide, or 8 feet tall, 12 feet wide, something like that. And the deer aren't going to be able to do this kind of damage to it. But this is just sort of my reality. And unfortunately, because of my HOA, I am not able to put a deer fence around my property. I know some of you have asked why that's something that we haven't done. I just can't do it. And it's not practical for me to put cages around hundreds of plants. That wouldn't look good, and I also just could not feasibly do that. But liquid fence spraying, having a dog has helped. But it's just, it is what it is. So I wanted to go over some of the beautiful things that I picked up at the Spokane Gardeners Expo. And that includes these beautiful polygonatum or Solomon seal. This variety, I believe, is the giant Solomon seal. They're typically hardy from zones 3 to 9. These can get up to 3 feet tall or taller. They will slowly spread via rhizomes underneath the soil. They die down completely to the ground in the wintertime and emerge and up, kind of look like a snake's head emerging up from the ground. I have some that are coming up in the border behind me that I will show you, as well as some that are further along. But this is a partial shade to shade loving plant. I don't have a lot of shade in my garden yet. That'll take some years to achieve. But I plan to fill as many of those spaces as I can with Solomon seal, because it is a gorgeous perennial and one that I primarily want to use as a cut flower. So I want to have a ton of it so I can use it for the purpose of a cut flower. But these gorgeous bell flowers are just stunning. These little white, look like little wedding bells. Such a gorgeous romantic cottage flower. And then so I have 3 of those, and then I went ahead and I picked up also 2, and it was so funny, this current expo was packed, so I would go pick something up, and then somebody would ask me a question oftentimes, and I would sell the plants too much, and so by the time I turned around to buy more, they'd be gone. This happened like 2 or 3 times while I was there. But I picked up 2 of these apple blossom astrantias. Now, I have never grown astrantia, but I have seen it in many cottage gardens. It's a beautiful star-like flower. They do say they like partial shade. These get 3 feet high to 2 feet wide. Summer clusters of pincushion blooms, pink in bud, opening white on 2-foot stems. Awesome, fragrant, fresh cut flower, also dries superbly. Decent soil, even moisture. Fabulous pastel heirloom classic among perennials or bright shade companions. So this is one that I definitely wanted to pick up. I want to find the perfect spot for it. We are still experiencing loads of wind, as you can see, although it's not violent wind like it has been. And then I picked up kind of the other side of the spectrum, these gorgeous salvias, just the most vibrant, rich pink, and such a beautiful companion for roses. I think I'm going to put these in the prairie border so I can see them from the house. This variety is called Salvia Skyscraper Dark Purple. And I will, these don't have any information on their tags, but I'm going to put all the zone information up on the screen for you to see. But I grabbed 3 of these, just a beautiful salvia. It's definitely a perennial, kind of typically in our area, a tender perennial. So if we have a really, really harsh winter, we may lose them depending on the variety. But I have heard that they are fairly easy to propagate. So I might try to actually propagate some of these later on this season and have a backstock for next year, because this is just such a beautiful variety. So something that I definitely want to get better at over the years is propagating my own plants. Back behind, I have this beautiful Thalictrum. This is another shade-loving plant. I have some of these back behind my bleeding hearts. This is one of the plants that I went to grab, turn around, put it in my wagon, and by the time I turned back around to grab two more, they were already gone. But this variety, and this might actually be the same variety I already have, Thalictrum black stockings. It has these beautiful dark purple stems. I will put all of its own information up on the screen. But Thalictrums they're not a perennial, like there's some that I've been looking for forever, like Thalictrum de la Veii. But they're not super easy to find, especially like the more specialty varieties. But definitely one that I want to keep adding to my garden as my shade borders grow. And then finally, I grabbed a rose that I have, for whatever reason, not added to my garden yet. But this was such a nice, healthy shrub, and I couldn't pass it up. It is the Earth Angel Rose from the Parfuma collection. It has that beautiful, like, globe shape, that very cupped, deep cupped rose, and soft pink, supposed to be wonderfully fragrant. So I'm excited to see this one. I'm going to plant this out in the prairie border where I've got loads of roses going already, and happy to see how it does. It already is loaded up with lots of blooms, and yeah, it just looked remarkably healthy. So excited to have found this size of a rose this time of year. So back to the little square border by the front entrance, I wanted to show you some of the Solomon seal that I already have growing back here. I've got two varieties. I've got the variegated Solomon seal and the regular one. This one, I accidentally planted a hydrangea on top of it last fall because these had died back early. I had planted them in the heat of our really, really intensely hot summer last year, and I thought they were gone. So I planted this hydrangea here, but they have grown through together. So at some point or other, I'm going to have to separate them and figure that out. But I have some Thalictrum back here. Looks to be a similar variety to what I picked up underplanted with all of these bleeding hearts, and then self-sown forget-me-nots, some Jack Frost Brunnera, some white bleeding hearts, and then back in here by my water spigot there's some Solomon seal coming up out of the ground. But if you can see, if I can squeeze back here, the heads kind of look like a snake head as they're peeking up out of the ground. They're easy to snap off, so definitely put them somewhere where you're not going to be walking over them a ton. Here's the variegated variety I have back here. A peony that needs staking, and then my beautiful Royal Raindrops crabapple is budding up and getting ready to bloom. So, but that is what the Solomon seal looks like. So this is fairly typical of me, but as I was filling up my watering can, I got soaking wet. I'm either getting soaking wet or dirty, or both, and that's just normal for me in the garden. But I wanted to pop in this Earth Angel rose in this spot. I think it will be a good one. There are now dozens of roses in this border, many of which were planted bare root this spring, so they're still quite small. But I think this one will look nice here at the base of this Shogetsu flowering cherry. And then I have three, I did plant those three Beauty of Moscow lilacs I picked up in Seattle behind along the road to kind of be the beginning of a hedgerow. Now in places where I already had bulbs planted or I have densely planted up in the front of the border and wasn't able to lay paper around, I kind of brought paper as far up to these clumps as I could and then hand weeded around. And there are already weeds popping up wherever there is light and air around these bulbs. So I'm going to have to be kind of coming through and continually roguing out all the weeds in these little clumps, but I didn't want to sacrifice the bulbs I had already planted, so that's just what I'm going to have to do. So like here where there is landscape paper, you can kind of see when it gets wet, it does start to slowly decompose, so if you put like a shovel to it, it tears very easily. Typically, I'm going to wait, in the majority of this bed, I'm going to be waiting quite a while to fully plant it up until well after all of this understory of weeds have died down. But you can see just in a matter of days, all of these weeds under here are going yellow. They are dying. I'm just going to cut them out, mulch around this rose. So the ground up here, like in many spots in this flower bed, is so solid. I'm going to be using my big auger to make a deep enough hole for this rose. So I'm going to continue to plant these in a little trio, and hopefully, if they are happy, they will spread all around the back of this border. Now, I don't know how they're going to fare with the deer, to be entirely honest. The deer have not yet bothered them in the other part of my garden, but that's right up against the house. And they're a little bit more hidden over there, so you know, it's hard to say. I think these look really nice in this spot. And if you're wondering how that Sarcococa did, that had all of that windburn, the sweet box, it is alive. I cut all the dead burned stuff off and it's alive, but just small. So this area along the steps is where I had the Rosy Jane Gara. There are 3 of them. However, I don't know if they're just really late to come up this year or if they are gone. And so I think I'm going to plant the Apple Blossom Astrantia here in between, just in case those didn't make it through the winter. Then I can pull them out, but I don't want to give up hope on them just yet. So I wanted to go over some sad news with you guys. We found out a few weeks ago that a black bear was in our neighborhood. So a lot of our neighbors had actually caught the black bear on their game cams and their security cameras on their property. And this is pretty early in the season for us to have any kind of bear sightings, I would say, from our experience in the last few years of living here. We had a black bear get our beehives the first year we lived here in November. So it was like late October, early November, while it was getting ready for the winter. And they actually eat the bees in the larvae and destroy the frames. You know, our bees had only been here for a couple of weeks and there was no honey to be had. The bear was after the larva for all the protein. And we thought that by having our hives closer to the house, like this is really my husband's pet project. It's his thing. But he thought that they would be okay, and we were just going to try it out. And really, really sadly, the bear got to them one night at about 11 o'clock, also got into our garbage cans and spread garbage everywhere, but tore apart our hives, and we lost both of the hives. So that is a huge lesson learned. We will not again be trying to keep honeybees outside of having some kind of enclosure for them that is bear proof or a hot fence. We were very cautious about putting a hot fence anywhere on our property because we have children and we have a dog, and we didn't want to risk them getting hurt. But we need to figure out some sort of solution. We do want to keep bees. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but yeah, just a really big loss in all aspects, and just really sad for my husband to have lost his bees. But that's sort of like living out in the country and dealing with nature. Bears are a problem out here, as well as cougars and deer and wild turkeys. I kind of joke that we should have named our property Turkey Hill because we literally have dozens and dozens of turkeys that roam our hillside that we see almost daily. And but there already was a very famous Turkey Hill belonging to Miss Martha Stewart. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed seeing me planting up these new perennials and seeing my new flower border, which I cannot wait to fill with a hedgerow and lots of beautiful things. So I'll just end here with a little peek into our kitchen garden, but I wanted to show you this new etagere, I believe is how you pronounce it, which I got from Pottery Barn in the Julia Berolzheimer collaboration. I also got her front door mat, which is up on our front steps. But I cannot wait to fill this with beautiful pots, and I think I'm going to be putting some special dahlias on here, and maybe some heirloom chrysanthemums that I'm growing, but I'm still trying to figure that out. But like what you can see, I've actually weeded in here. This is all chamomile growing all over the gravel, and I'm just leaving it because we're not doing new gravel this year. And once it blooms, it's a pollinator magnet and looks very dreamy. And like I said, about 50+% of the bulbs I ordered this year were mislabeled. Not what I ordered. Like, I definitely ordered one of my favorite tulips here called Santander, which has this gorgeous blue throat, but I did not order this variety. It looks like maybe Columbus. Should have been La Belle Epoque. So far, none of the La Belle Epoques I ordered this year have come up true to variety, but I'll just have to order some more for next year. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this and have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy gardening. I'll see you next time.